All right, I am going to start up. Today is Thursday, the 5th of November, and we're continuing on. I did want to mention something to you in case you did not know this, and that is if you look up on the screen here, when we were working on Hello World, all right? And if I double click on my file or my folder that says Hello World, you can just start up Xcode, and when you start up Xcode, one of the things that it'll show you is the last file or files that you've worked on. But if you don't want to do that, you can also open up the folder, and you'll notice that there is an Xcode proj file, and that's it. That'll start up Xcode and start it up also. That's usually how I do it. I don't know why I don't do it the other way, but that just seems to be the way I typically do it. We have almost nothing more to do on here. Literally, what we're going to do is not going to take long. Probably it'll take the first half hour or so. Then I'm going to just stop recording on here, resume recording on here, because there's a few things I want to show you. I just didn't want to bring a bunch of PDFs and a bunch of other stuff over. Hopefully you'll never get this message that I'm getting right here. Because, yeah. The bad thing is when I tried, at home, it came up and it wouldn't go away. You click cancel, boom. Click cancel, that's when I had to restart it 6 times. All right. It's telling me it wants me to join the wireless, but it won't let me join the wireless this morning, so that's fine. All right, so what we did last time was all the stuff you see on your screen. And if you don't remember, what I've done is this is called the assistant editor right here, and this is my storyboard. I have my view controller scene showing over here, but what's not showing over here right now, what's not here, is I don't have that navigator showing. And you remember that it's one of these up here, I don't remember which one, but one of these will allow you, I think it's the first one, to show or not show the navigator. All right, they all have tooltips on them. It's no big thing. I do want to explain something to you though, because one of the things what we did last time when we edited was this right here, and it kind of looks like a mess. All right, it's sort of typical for the way that you write a lot of the different methods in, be it Swift, Objective-C, or whatever. They put a lot of stuff. They do shove 10 pounds worth into a 5-pound bag. But what's going to happen when we end up running this program? All right, our button's going to say Hello World, but when we click the button, we're going to run this routine that's called Show Message. All right, when we run this routine that's called Show Message, it's going to put up the equivalent of a message box. All right, that's not what they call it here, but that's pretty much what it is. Okay, the title of that will be Welcome to My First App, and it'll literally say on it, Hello World. There'll be an OK button on it. All right, so in other words, our program, and I realize if you're watching this on tape, it doesn't help you much, but on the screen, we just have the button right in the middle of where we put it that says Hello World. And it doesn't even look like a button. It looks more like a text box or a label than it does a button. All right? Right now, this doesn't, to me at least, this doesn't look like a button. We'll talk about how to change that later. That's not really that important in the main scheme of things. But the idea is when we run the program and we click that button, what should happen is this should basically disappear, and we should have the equivalent, like I said, of a output box, whatever, message box, whatever you want to call it. The title up here should be Welcome to My First App. And then it should say Hello World right here. And it should have down here an OK button. And when you click OK, that should go away. And it should go back and look the way that it did when we started, where we just had the button that said Hello World. So again, you click this button, this goes away, and you get that. Does that make sense to everyone? All right. Now there's a lot of stuff in here that may or may not make sense to you. So I'm going to show you something you may or may not want to use. All right? If you notice, everything that's here that's light blue, it doesn't look like it. It doesn't look like it right now, but I'm going to show you how. Everything that you see on your screen right now that's light blue. So, UI view controller, viewed in load, did receive memory warning, all this other stuff. It doesn't look like it, but it's all hyperlinked. Everything that's there is hyperlinked. You put your mouse over it, it doesn't show a hyperlink, but I'm going to show you how to bring up online help for anything that's in blue. All right? So, for instance, let's say that Thwan had a question and she didn't understand what this UI alert controller was. All right? So she just didn't understand what that was. So if you take your mouse and you put it on there, not your mouse, but you move your cursor over there and double click to highlight it. All right? Again, nothing magical happens, not yet. But I'm going to do that. All right? So I just double clicked on it. Tried to. Come on. It's about as awake as I am this morning, so I think it's highlighted now. And now, it has to be at least somewhat highlighted, Jeff.
You gotta click the double circle in the upper.
And it doesn't matter what you choose, as long as you choose something here that's in light blue. So if Travis wants to learn more about the UI view controller, he can highlight that. But anything that's in light colored blue. After you've done that, your mouse has to be in there someplace. All right, and my mouse, you can see, is right here. Everybody see that? All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold down on the pad and I'm going to click the key that says Option. And it should come up. Come on. I don't know why. Maybe it's my machine, but boy, this worked a hell of a lot better in the older version. But with that highlighted, what I wanted to eventually do is to show you a little question mark. And that's what should happen when you do this. All right?
You said hold down.
Hold on. You're not even supposed to have to hold down on anything. You're supposed to be able to just click the Option key. Not holding down on anything. Just click, Option. It's on the bottom row on the left. It's got the word Option on it, your keyboard. It's a keyboard key.
Keyboard.
I can't type in mine.
Oh, okay, mine worked.
All right. If you do that and you get the question mark, then you should be able to click on it and it should bring up hyperlinked help. And if you say, okay, I did it, but that was way too hard, I'm going to show you how to do it another way, but I don't want to, I can't connect to the wireless on the system, so I have to wait until the lecture's over and I can go back to the non-Apple one and I'll show you another way to do it. All right, so if you just want to do it online. If it didn't work, don't worry about it. All right?
So when the question mark came up, what did you do?
When the question mark comes up like this, so when the question mark comes up, you can take your mouse, and I see like mine won't even come up now, and I don't know why. I tried it 3 or 4 times. There you go. Then you take your mouse and you put it on there and you click and you highlight it. See that? And that gives you help. So I can go down here and all the stuff that's in blue is now hyperlinked. It tells me the class it came from. It tells me about UI kit. It tells me about the class reference. If that was too hard, then don't do it. I'm just saying because I've had this happen before. That's really hard. Then don't do it. I'll show you how to use the Apple online documentation also. But this can work. Last semester I did it. I never had a problem with it. Boom, highlighted, everything worked. This semester, I click on it, and it just moves my mouse someplace else. So I don't know what's going on. But it's fine. What I'm just trying to do is just show you there are a couple ways of doing the same thing, and that's one way of doing it. All right. So again, what I want you to get across though is in that particular routine that's right here, the show message, we are setting it up so when we click our button here, it ends up looking like this here. And if you get that, that's where you should be right now. Okay? All right. They don't give much of an explanation here as far as what's going on in this code. And when I say they don't give you much, it's right there on your screen. It's in that one paragraph that you see there. And I'm not going to read it to you. But the author says you just did create a new method. All right? And if you may or may not agree with this, but we really haven't put any of our own code in here, so to speak. We haven't created variables. We haven't done any actual processing. We're going to do that in the example that we go through next week. All right? So, it says, again, the idea is when the method is called, the block of code will instruct iOS to display a hello world message on the screen. All right. Now, the next thing that we have to do, as it says there, is to connect the user interface with code. And I want to take a couple minutes and explain this. It may or it may not make sense. I don't know. But when I get done, if it doesn't make sense, then raise your hand. So if you'd stop, whatever you're doing, if you just stop for a second and look up here. One of the things that Swift does is it adheres to something that's known as MVC, or the Model View Controller Architecture. Right now, you don't have to do this. Right now, if you ran your program and you clicked your button, what do you think would happen?
It blows up. Doesn't do anything.
He's right, you're wrong. If yours blows up,
Mine blows up.
okay, well then I think it's because it's you. All right. And all the fun that you have with Macs. All right. But right now, we haven't made the physical connection between the button and the code. Because the code is in our .swift file. The button is in our storyboard file. As of right now, they don't know that they're supposed to be communicating with one another. We're going to do that next. All right? Again, I don't want to read this to you, but that's pretty much what the author is saying here. How can we tell that button that when we click it, we want it to run the routine that's called show message? And that's the last page on here, so that's what we're going to talk about. All right. If you've never done this before, and my guess is none of you have, all right, it's a little bit different. If you click the wrong key right now, rather than making the connection, so if you click the wrong key, rather than making the connection, what's going to happen is you're going to click here and you're going to want to drag in just a second, okay? And I'll show you exactly what it is in just a second. But if you click the wrong key, instead of clicking and dragging, what you want to see is a blue line. And you're going to connect that to the view controller. We're going to do that in a second. But if you click the wrong button and you start to move it, what's going to happen is your button's going to start moving up on the screen. You don't want that to happen. So if that happens, let go of it. Just let go. All right? It's like I remember, first time I ever used my mower, I thought, geez, this is a lot more powerful than anything I've ever had. And I thought, you know what? I still have the master power over it, right? I can let go because it was an electric one, but I can let go and the power went. That's your power. So if you do something wrong, just let go and don't hold on to anything and nothing should happen. All right. As it says, we need to establish that connection. Now, if you look on your keyboard, you'll notice that you have on the left-hand side, the left-hand bottom of the keyboard, if you look at the bottom part, you've got one key there way on the left that says FN. That's your function key. You'll almost never use that. All right? The one next to it says Control. That's the one you're going to use in just a minute. Okay? The one next to that says Option. You'll use that sometimes in conjunction with other things that you do. We just used that Option key a minute ago, right? All right? And you can use either the one to the left of your space bar or the one to the right of your space bar. It doesn't matter. Also, if you look next to that, you got your command key. That command key that you see that's both to the left and to the right of the space bar, that key that says command on it, that's like the control key that we use in Windows. So if you want to copy, it's Command C as opposed to Control C like we do in Windows. All right, and that gets confusing to people. Then why do they have another key called Command? I didn't write the whatever keyboard. So I can't tell you why they did it like that, but they did it like that. All right, so if you all look up on the screen here, what I literally want to do, all right? I don't want to insult anybody's intelligence, but I want to make sure you get this. You want your mouse to be anywhere inside of here, all right? We're going to then hold down on the key that's got the word control on it. You have to hold down on that on your mouse, and then hold down on with your mouse pad. Also hold down and then drag up from here to there. And if it comes out and it's blue, you get an arrow that comes up and it's blue. You're doing it right. If anything else happens, you're doing it wrong. I can't be any more plain than that. All right? So I'm going to do it, and we'll see if I do it right. So I'm holding down right now on the control key. Got my mouse there. I'm holding down on the mouse pad. It didn't take it. See? So that's... There it is. See where I'm getting the blue line? And make sure the one you drag up to is the yellow one. And then let go. And if you get a black box like this that comes up, you did it right. If you don't get that black box, you did it wrong. Try it a few times. Don't raise your hand and ask. Try it. This is how we're going. See, you find your way to get back at me, right? If it worked, and you get this up here, if you look up on the screen right here, all right, if you look at the screen, anybody want to take a wild guess over which one of those you're going to choose?
Set event, show message.
The show message. That's going to physically do the linkage between the two.
Any reason why I got a lot more options on you?
Ours is updated farther than his.
Yeah, that's a good point. Thank you, Luke. Luke said that you guys have more options up there than I do, and that's because I'm running Swift 1 instead of Swift 2. I still have to upgrade mine.
No, don't delete it. Oh.
All right, we're going to wait till everybody's caught up here. But if you haven't done so, choose the one that says Show Message. You literally want to take your mouse and click on where it says Show Message. And guess what? That's really all you have to do. So after you do that, try to run it.
It works.
So try to run the program, and when it comes up, click the button that says Hello World.
It's my first tab.
Where were we supposed to put the view controller at?
This?
No, I got a bill that says cannot call value a non-function type UI view controller. I had to make this stuff in for the show.
Yeah, just leave it.
We all have to take that stuff after the show message.
Maybe I'm
All
just
right.
getting something wrong.
So that says to me that there's an error in your code. That's what the problem is. John, when you get done, then delete it and make her do it. I'm serious, because it's
Yeah.
that fundamental in operation. You have to learn how to do
Right,
it,
and
because
just-
we're going to
well,
do it in literally every program we do.
She wants me to bring up the code for her.
I understand. But what I'm saying is, after you get it, that's the assistant editor,
Yeah.
and that's
No, that's
the one that looks like rings. It's over there.
the assistant.
So that's the physical.
So it's the set
That's
event
the-
is what?
That's the bringing up.
It's
the
under
assistant
send
editor.
events.
This is the story.
Send events, but the one you want to click on is literally where it says show message.
You have-
It's just showing that that's under this.
Okay.
All right. What's gonna drive you a little bit nuts as we
No,
get
you're
going?
clicking the wrong button.
Here's the hardest question you've ever gotten from me in any class. So I'll put it to Travis. All right. If you're working with an Intel type of package like C# or whatever, and you want to put code in a buttons click event, what is that click event called? It's always something underscore click, right? Correct? Here, for whatever reason, you're going to see this as we go on. You're going to see it next week already. They don't call it click. They call it touch up inside. I don't know why, but that's the verbiage that they use.
Oh, yeah, that's
Did you get it? Did you get it?
Well,
All right. So I'm going to choose it just like I told you to, and I'm going to highlight show message, and I'm going to click. You should get a little flash by your actual view controller there, and then I'm going to, it's always a good idea before you run this. It's supposed to save for you automatically, but I always try to save anyway. Then run the program again.
Yay, mine blew up.
You want to help that kid?
no.
Did it really?
Yeah, it blew up.
The first thing I'd check then if that happened would be your code that we put in for the show
I would
message.
check the operator. Yeah.
So yours worked. Brad, did yours work?
Yeah.
Good. Ben, did yours work?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I just mentioned text.
Yeah, no, and that's fine. I mean, you know, it's whatever.
The event. That's why I asked about the thing, because I didn't know if it was just for like showing the message or if it was for all of it.
No,
just
for
for
here
the
it's
event.
just for this.
Okay.
So if we had another button and we wanted something else set up in there, we'd have to set up another one.
And you just
And-
drag out the.
Yeah, and there's other ways to do it that we're going to learn about as we go on. All right, the program that they're showing is pretty much the most basic one that you can write.
Maybe, no.
Now, what I get on my screen sometimes, maybe you saw that, sometimes I have to run mine at least twice because I'll get a message up that says, unable to run app in simulator. Not sure why I get that. I've even tried to look it up, but I still have problems with it, so I don't know what the problem is. The machine is actually a little older now because it's about 3 years old. All right, these are about a year newer. So. And last thing on this, just so you know, if you have any problems, all right, there is a folder out there with today's date in it. I've got a working copy of it. It's called HelloWorld 2 because I made the copy. All right. Still not sure why it's not coming up, but I'm going to give it a minute or two to see if it does. There you go. Good. All right. So there it is. See that? So those of you who had asked, the Welcome to My First App, that's the title. The Hello World. So, welcome to my first app. Welcome to my first app. Hello World. Hello World. OK button. OK button. So you can see how that stuff all maps up to each other. All right? So the program didn't do much. We spent a lot more time setting it up and talking about what had to be done than we did doing it. But the goal is, and I thought about it, I don't know why, but yesterday, accidentally I brought up the wrong folder. Remember the old guessing game program? Thought we'll do that one next. So we'll do that one next, both in Android and in Swift for iOS. So we'll do it both. That's what we'll be doing next week. All right. So you'll notice if I click OK, it goes back, and it's my button again. And if I have nothing better to do, I can pack a lunch and just keep clicking that button and then clicking OK all day long. All right? So, as the author says, if you look up on the screen here, we have now established the connection. All right, again, that's on page 8 of the handout. All right, it says run the project again and see what happens. So this was a typical first iPhone app. As the author says, it's simple because even though we typed a little bit, the actual interface and stuff is simple. I know Ben had mentioned it in his, he changed the text. You can put anything you want in there. You know, I'm going to give you some time because after the break at least, it's the rest of the period's yours. Because I want you to start playing with this stuff. So if you want, you can go in and, for instance, I could come back in here and where I have the button, I could come over to here by the button. I can click over here to bring up my object inspector. No, wrong here. And I could play with that. I can make the color different. I can do whatever I want. That's how you're going to learn, is to sit there and start playing with this stuff. All right, so I want to give you some time to do that. All right. Chapter 4 of this book, and we have the first 5 chapters, but we're going to talk about 4 right now, and there's not a lot in here. What this does is this goes over an explanation of everything we just did in the program. All right, so as you can see, it's a 5-page PDF. All right. And the author says, before we go on to explore, let's pause here and have a closer look at the HelloWorld app. So as he mentions here, this is the middle of page 1. These are the questions that he attempts to answer over these 5 pages. All right. How does the view controller and the storyboard link up with the view controller class in the viewcontroller.swift file? What does the block of code inside of show message mean? All right. What does IB action mean? You may or may not have noticed that, but you typed in an @ and IB action. Okay? IB, just for your information, where you type that in for that show message, IB stands for Interface Builder. All right? What is behind the Hello World button? How can the button detect taps and triggers for the show message? And how does the run button in Xcode work? What do you mean by compile an app? That's over the next 4 or 5 pages. That's what the author attempts to answer. All right? You've had a lot of stuff like this or similar to this in other classes. But this stuff is specific to running an application and running it on a Mac. All right? So as the author said, I wanted you to focus on exploring the Xcode environment, so I didn't explain anything to you about what's going on. That's what he's going to try to do here. And he starts by, he says, let's look at a real-life example. All right? He says, consider a TV remote control. Well, what's nice about a remote control? You can sit in any part of the room, and you can adjust the channel, you can adjust the volume, you know, and other different kinds of settings. Okay? So the author says, let me ask you, do you know what happens when you press the volume control? I don't know about you, but I don't. Other than I think some kind of a signal has got to be sent to the box that says inside, in your innards, so to speak, you've got something that controls the volume. And turn it up. But how that happens, I don't know. How that happens, I don't care. All right? And there's different words for this, but basically what's happened is all the stuff that's working in there has been abstracted from me. It happens behind the scenes. Okay? Now, and it's funny because, and maybe I've told you about this, but years ago I had a friend who was a mechanic, did a lot of work on my car. And I would just marvel in the stuff that he was able to do. Lift up the hood and, oh, I know what that is. And boom, boom, boom. He could fix it. Not a problem. He just marveled at the way that I could do stuff with computers. I didn't think that was that cool that I could. He didn't think that was that cool. But the point is, when I get, you know, he'd fix my car and I'd leave his shop and I'd put the car in reverse and back up. I don't know internally in that car what was happening. I didn't care. I would care if I put it in reverse and I started going forward. All right, yeah, I would care then, right? But I don't know, and that's how we live a lot of our lives. And that's what they're saying here. All right? It says, I believe most of us don't even know how a remote control communicates. I wouldn't even say that. I would say most of us don't care. All right? And the bottom line is, you know as well as I do, if you want to know that badly, you'd probably go out to Google and you'd Google it and you'd find out how it works. So he tries to liken this then to your program. He says the button that interacts with you is commonly characterized as the interface. All right, and the details behind it are the implementation. So in other words, you run the program, you got that button. That's your interface. That's what's visible to the outside world. But when you click the button and show message comes, that's the implementation. The implementation is the code. Typically, the interface is public. Anyone who runs it can see that. Typically, the implementation is private. You want it like that because you typically don't want to show your code to everybody. All right? Unless it's open source and we're all developers, that kind of an idea. All right, and that's what he gets to in here, talking about interface and implementation. I'm not going to say any more about it, okay? All right, he says if you go back to the Hello World project you added, he says the show message method of the view controller class is the implementation. That's the code in the background that makes the program do what it's supposed to be doing. And that's exactly what the author is saying here. So he says the whole thing, I refer to it as abstraction. Sometimes it's referred to as encapsulation. And it even goes by another name, which is data hiding. You hear that sometimes. Which means that basically I'm going to show you what you need to know in order to do whatever it is you're trying to do, but I'm not going to show you any more than that. Why? Why wouldn't I show you any more than that? Why wouldn't I show you the code? I'm asking you, why wouldn't I show you the code? Because you might think, well, this is pretty cool. I wonder what happened if I did this. I wonder what would happen if I did that. Right? Did you ever notice that sometimes, and they've had this in the past on computers. In fact, Apple, in the olden days at least, they were infamous for this. There would be a little sticker on there that would say, if you open up this computer, you void any warranty that you have for it. And they do that because they only want people working on it who have a clue as to what they're doing. All right. So, behind the touch, it says, now that you should understand what's going on here, how does the Hello World button invoke the execution of the show message? That's what happened when we just did our click and drag. And I mentioned, some of you may not have heard it when I said this, the way that you were shown in here, to hold down on that and click and drag, that's one way of doing it. There are other ways of doing it as well, and we'll talk about those as we get going, all right? So it says, you remember how you established the connection between the button and the show message event in the interface builder, all right? Again, it says open the main storyboard again and do it again, boom, boom, boom. They tell you to go back and just basically repeat it. But what they're saying is, if we go back under sent events, oops, right here. This is already what I mentioned to you. If you look at what's in blue here on the screen, what they're telling you is what you did by setting it up equal to that show message thing is you sent a signal to the system that said, oh, for that button, for its touch up inside event, run show message. That's exactly what we told it to do by clicking on the button and dragging up to our view controller, and then in the black box that came out, choosing the show message event. That's what we're doing. We're linking the stuff up. Because as far as the system is concerned, until you do that linking, you've got an interface over here and you've got an implementation, but they don't talk. By you clicking on that, dragging up, seeing that blue line that came up and highlighting it and then choosing the send message thing, that linked the two of them up. That's exactly what the author's saying here. All right? Then he does talk a little bit in here, says inside of the show message method. So if you want a little bit more of what's going on in there, you can read this. I've already shown you how you can click that control key and you can get that hyperlinked help right on screen, and I'm going to show you yet another way in just a minute, as soon as I unhook from the Mac and hook back up here. So we'll do that in just a second, all right? But he mentions a few basic things. And if you're just starting, of course, they don't seem all that basic, but it's stuff that you really should understand. Okay? First of all, what we're working with, this is a totally object-oriented language. Everything in here, they're classes and objects. Remember, when you have classes and you have objects, you have methods. But for whatever reason, they decided in this language not to call it method, they call them funcs. F-U-N-C. So you create a func, it's a method. Even though it says func, it's a method. All right? And that's what he's saying up here. And you got the name of the method. All right? Sometimes you're going to use built-in methods. Sometimes you're going to write your own methods. All right? Just like we've done in other languages. And that's what he talks about in here. But then he says there's one key word in that method declaration we haven't discussed yet. It's the at sign IB action. As it says, IB action allows you to connect your source code to the user interface objects in Interface Builder. What the heck is Interface Builder? It's what you use in conjunction with your storyboard to put all of your objects on your storyboard. The actual linkage that's done is typically referred to as Interface Builder. You may or may not remember, but one of the things that we looked at on the first day when I went over and showed you the stuff that was over here in your Project Navigator, one of the things we talked about a splash screen, but it said bring up your zib or nib interface.xib. That ID that's on there is Interface Builder. All right. So if you want a little more, you can read that. All right. So he says, enough. Let's talk about the block of code that actually exists in there. All right? It says when you're developing apps in iOS, you don't need to write all the functions by scratch. Even more so than that, if there's a function that already exists that you can use, that's what you want to use. All right? And that's what he gets to in here. He says you can use classes that were already provided for you by the iOS SDK, known as a framework, to do a lot of the work for you, such as, well, remember, at the top of our screen, we had import UI kit. And that said that everything that was in that UI kit package, or whatever you want to call it, is now available to us. We don't have to go and write a lot of that stuff by hand. All right. And as it says, we use a UI alert controller to create the hello world message. And he tries to break it down in here kind of step by step. And it's pretty much what I've already shown you. All right, so it says, we're going to create a message box or the equivalent of one. The title will be Hello World. The message that it has in there will be Hello World. And the style will be, make it look like an alert box. So how do you learn about the rest of the stuff that's in here? What if I don't want it to be an alert? Then you type in all this stuff. You type in UI alert controller style dot, and the IntelliSense kicks in. And there's other things that you could choose. That's the best way to learn this stuff, is to just try a few things. What's the worst thing that's going to happen? You'll see no output. Maybe your program will blow up. All right? But still, is it that big a thing? So if you get it to work, you make a copy of what you've got, and you start playing with it. You do not learn this stuff by listening to me point the stuff on a screen and show you stuff and have you type along. You learn this stuff by practicing and doing it on your own. All right, then he explains what's happening in the action down below. Okay. And there. Boy, I wish I'd have seen that. So this is what I showed you before about that. It says you may wonder about the usage and available methods of a class. If you press and hold the Option key, and then you point your cursor to the class name and click, all right, and I think the problem, I pointed there first, all right, rather than clicking the Option key first. I mean, I knew what the action was. I did it this morning several times, but I guess I wasn't maybe concentrating on the order in which I was doing those operations. All right. Then the last line, as it says there, that says, show me that on the screen. What you end up doing in this language a lot, is you say self dot something. They don't use the word this, like we've got and we've used in Java, and you'll use it more in Android. They use the word self. Means whatever is currently active, for lack of better words. All right? So you can see all the stuff that's in there. It says in most cases the self keyword is optional, whereas in Android a lot of times it's not optional, but you almost always see it in there anyway. All right. Then, finally, he finishes this up. He said, what's the relationship between the user interface and the code? All right. And it's what I already mentioned to you. It's the relationship between the interface and the implementation. All right. Finally, he talks about the process that you go through here to run your program. And it's stuff you may or may not care about, but you can look at it at least. He says the entire process can be broken down into 3 different phases. Compile, package, and run. All right. Compile, as it says, you probably think your iOS, the iOS understands Swift code. No, it's got to be broken down into machine language equivalents. That's what's happening in the compile. In package, it's grabbing all that machine language code and it's combining it with images, sound, audio, video, whatever you got. It's combining it together. And it puts it together, and that's what's known as the build process. Then it runs it. All right? So that was it. But before we go and take a break, I want to have just about literally, just about 5 minutes if I can have of your time. And then we'll be done. You can do whatever you want to do for the rest of the period. Just let me stop the run here.